it's Erica. Welcome back to Maniacal Reader. Today I'm going to be telling you all about my 2017 reading goals. Just before we get into today's video, I just wanted to do an end of the year check-in for my 2016 reading goals. I'll put a link down to my 2016 reading goals, and I also did a mid-year check-in of my 2016 reading goals. I'll also put that video down below in the description. I just wanted to tell you that I did complete reading the Under the Never Sky trilogy, and I did read the Divergent trilogy. What I didn't get to was the Program series. This was one of the books that I still wanted to read in my mid-year check-in point, but I unfortunately didn't get to it. Now let's move on to my 2017 reading goals. My first goal in 2017 is to read more YA sci-fi and dystopian reads. Sci-fi is a genre that I hardly touched in 2016. My second goal is to read more YA high fantasy. This is a genre that I hardly ever touch at all in my reading life. I definitely want to read more YA high fantasy, and just to see if I like the genre, since it's one that I hardly ever read. I also want to do a better job at reading some of the books that are on my TBR that I actually own. So this year I've come up with a third goal to read 5 series or trilogies that I own before I buy or read the first book in a new series or trilogy. And that way I hope to lessen the books on my TBR this year. Now let's get into the more book-specific goals. Most of the books on this list are sci-fi and fantasy, since those are genres that I said I wanted to focus on. So the first series or trilogy I want to get to is Partials by Dan Wells. This is the first book in a YA post-apocalyptic trilogy. It follows this girl named Kara, who is tasked with saving the world from creatures who call themselves partials. Humanity has been decimated by a strange disease, and the world has been invaded by aliens who call themselves partials. This trilogy reminds me of the Fifth Wave trilogy, so I'm wondering if this trilogy has any similarities to that trilogy, but I think this trilogy is going to be interesting. The next book series that I want to get to is 1,000 Pieces of You by Claudia Gray. This is the first book in the Firebird trilogy, and it's actually a book that I've read this month, and I've done a spoiler-free review of this. I really liked this trilogy a lot, and you'll hear more of my thoughts on this book in that review, as well as my February wrap-up. The next series that I want to get to is the Ugly series by Scott Westerfeld. This is another sci-fi dystopian series. I've heard that this series is a staple in the sci-fi dystopian genre, but I haven't gotten around to reading it yet. This book follows a girl named Tally, and in this world, when everyone's about to turn 16, they have the option of getting an operation that's supposed to turn them pretty. But Tally's best friend Shay isn't sure if she wants to be pretty. Tally learns that this world of turning pretty isn't everything that it seems. I've heard that this is an awesome sci-fi dystopian series. I've been wanting to read it for a couple of years, so I'm looking forward to getting to it this year. The next series that I want to get to is Fallen Kingdoms by Morgan Rhodes. And I heard that this book is like a good starting place if you're not familiar with YA high fantasy, or if you just want to check out the fantasy genre, so that's why I picked it up. I've heard tons of things about this series from nearly every booktuber I watch. I'm looking forward to finally starting this series. If I do like this series, I'm looking forward to picking up the spin-off series. The next series that I want to get to is Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. This is the first book in a YA high fantasy trilogy, and everyone on BookTube lately has been talking about the Six of Crows duology, which is set in the Grisha world, so I definitely wanted to pick up this original Grisha trilogy before I move on to the Six of Crows duology this year, if I do end up liking this trilogy. I've heard that it's a good idea to read this original trilogy first before moving on to that duology. I don't know much about the Grisha world or this Grisha trilogy. All I know is that it follows this main character who is supposed defeat this dark evil force called the Darkling, and that there's some sort of love triangle in this trilogy. So I'm looking forward to picking up this trilogy this year and finally getting on to the Lee Bardugo train. The next series I want to read this year is actually another trilogy. It's the Legend trilogy by Marie Lu. This is another YA sci-fi dystopian trilogy, and this book was popular on BookTube a few years ago, but I haven't read it yet. I've heard great things about it though. I might get to Marie Lu's other trilogy that's more popular right now called the Young Elites trilogy if I like this. The next series that I'm looking forward to getting to is the Half-Blood series by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is a YA paranormal fantasy series, and I actually read Jennifer L. Armentrout's Lux series a couple of years ago, and I've always wanted to pick up some of her other books since then, so I'm looking forward to getting into this new paranormal series. The synopsis is kind of complicated, so I'll just read the back to you. Hematoi descend from the unions of gods and mortals. The children of two Hematoi, purebloods, have godlike powers. Children of Hematoi and mortals, well, not so much. Half-bloods only have two options: become trained centennials who hunt and kill demons, or become servants in the homes of the pures. 17-year-old Alexandria would risk her life fighting than waste it scrubbing toilet, but she may end up slumming it anyway. There are several rules that students at the Covenant must follow. Alex has problems with all of them, but especially rule number 1. Relationships between pures and halves are forbidden. Unfortunately, she's crushing hard on the totally hot pureblood Aiden. Falling for Aiden isn't her biggest problem. Staying alive long enough to graduate the Covenant and become a centennial is. If she fails in her duty, she faces a future worse than death or slavery, being turned into a demon, or being hunted by Aiden. And that would kind of suck. From what I can tell by the synopsis, it sort of has a similar writing style to the Lux series, but I'm looking forward to getting to know these new paranormal creatures. I loved the Lux series and all of the action and romance in that series, so I'm hoping this book sort of has a sort of similar flavor to it. A balance of action as well as romance. The next series that I want to get to is Sweet Evil by Wendy Higgins. This is the first book in a YA paranormal fantasy trilogy. It follows this girl named Anna Witt, who's always been a good girl, but in her world, teens have lives that depend on them being bad influences. Anna Witt has always been a good girl. That changes when she turns 16, and she meets this guy named Caden Rowe, who is a bad boy, and she finds herself attracted to him. Also, Anna was born with a sixth sense that gives her the power to feel the emotions of other people. So this book definitely sounds interesting. I haven't read a YA paranormal fantasy series in a long time, so I think I'm really gonna like this one. The next series that I want to get to is Percy Jackson and the Olympian series, and this is the first book called The Lightning Thief. I have been wanting to get into Percy Jackson for a couple of years, and I've heard so many great things about this series. This is the first series that talks about Percy Jackson, and it's actually a middle grade fantasy. But Rick Riordan has other series that he bases on Greek and Roman mythology that are a little more YA, but I wanted to start with this original series and see how I feel about it, since I've been wanting to get onto the Rick Riordan train for a couple of years now. I figure that the Percy Jackson series is definitely a good series to start with. The next series that I want to get to is The Knife of Never Letting Go by Patrick Ness. This is the first book in another YA sci-fi dystopian trilogy, and it follows this town named Prentice Town. And in this Prentice Town, you can hear everyone's thoughts in an overwhelming structure called The Noise, in a world where privacy isn't possible. The main character, named Todd, has to run for his life because people are after him. I've heard great things about this trilogy, and since I want to get into more sci-fi and fantasy this year, I thought that this would be a good trilogy to pick up. And finally, the last series that I want to get to is Steelheart by Brandon Sanderson. This is a YA high fantasy trilogy and Steelheart is the first book. I believe this book is about a boy named David who has to stop something called the Steelheart, and he meets this rebel group called the Reckoners. I've heard a lot of things about Brandon Sanderson, and he usually writes a lot of adult fantasy, but this is his only YA fantasy that I've come across. I've heard that this book is a good book to pick up if you're just starting out in the YA high fantasy genre, so I also wanted to get to this book. If I like this trilogy, I may check out more of Brandon Sanderson's other books. Those are all of the trilogies and series that I hope to get to this year. I may not get to all of them, but I hope to at least read most of them. Last year in 2016, I mostly read exclusively new adult romance, and I definitely want to try to read more variety this year. On a side note, I wanted to tell you that I will be using a TBR jar again this year. I'll use that jar for whenever I don't know what to read or I'm having trouble deciding what to read next. That's when I'll pull out clips from the TBR jar. I might not use the TBR jar at the beginning of every month, but I'll do it whenever the mood strikes me. That's all for today's video. Comment down below and tell me what some of your goals are for 2017, or if you're planning on using a TBR jar. I'd love to know. I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!